what does it mean? Was your question? What is the eagle-eye view of what's going on? To my a simple, barefooted Adamite mind, it's all about the collapse of the Babylonian edifice. It is perfect geometry. It is the revelation. One could even call it the rapture that is upon us. But let's not get caught up in the false light rapture, the kind of the idolatrous religious rapture as an engineered event and orchestration as well. But the real rapture is the revelation, the awakening of the eternal mother, as I put it, which is upon us. This is a return to the sacred soil. This is a return and a resurrection of the angelic template. So we're seeing the end of days, but they are the fallen light of Atlantis days. We're seeing the onset of the resurrection of the angelic, the ineffable. It is all good as far as I'm concerned.
A huge shift is taking place on planet Earth. People seem to be waking up. Tired of the way things used to be, they are creating something brand new and changing the world we live in. My name is Brad Zales, and I get to sit down with the next generation of idea makers, the disruptors and the game changers. Everyday people just like you and me from all over who are doing amazing things. Welcome to Awakened Nation. Ladies and gentlemen, I am excited to have my guest on today, Mr. Sacha Stone, former rock musician and artist. Grew up in Rhodesia, Zimbabwe throughout the war for independence. Sacha, in case you don't know who he is an activist, public speaker, publisher, writer, and filmmaker with an outspoken advocate of human rights and natural justice, and formed Humanitad in 1999 and the International Tribunal for Natural Justice in 2015. He has investigated peace initiatives and education programs, lobbied against human rights abuses in different parts of the globe, and continues to prosecute for the protection of vanguard innovators, scientists, and doctors. Please welcome to Awakened Nation, Sacha Stone. Good to see you, my brother.
Nice to see you. Likewise, yes. Thank you.
So let's dig in. At the recording of this right now, we just had a huge tanker run into a bridge that collapsed. They're going after Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, for sex trafficking. All I have to ask is, once again, what are you seeing that is going on here on planet Earth that we need to know about?
In short thrift, I've been referring in the last few days to the wisdom of Confucius, who said that the world is governed by signs and symbols and not by rules and laws. And I think that we're about to enter into a delightful shit show, which is going to palpably prove that point out to even the most mundane and pedestrian minds. Illuminati, so-called Illuminati, invisible masters, Sabbatean elements, Babylonian priesthoods, secret societies, midnight masons, have ever been the controlling factor in the various arcs of civilization that we have variously surfed over millennia. And that brings us quite perfectly here to the year 2024 in the incorrect Gregorian, Julian, Catholic, Vatican calendar system. And it's a shit show precisely because we've reached a fulmination point, meaning to say that devilishness in the civilizational basement has reached its zenith. It cannot conduct any more evil than it has done. We split atoms almost a century ago. We rent the fabric of time-space in the 1930s and 40s with the atomic bombs and the thermonuclear quadrillion-dollar war machine, which now governs the world through the military might of Washington, District of Columbia, backed up by the trifecta of Switzerland, the black nobility's stronghold through Bank of International Settlements and so on, which is a private principality, the Vatican, a city itself, and of course the city of London. So that trifecta of evil behind the military might of Washington, D.C. is really a quadrangle. We speak in terms of three perennial powers, but it's actually four. You have to throw Switzerland into that. And I'm speaking about Switzerland because that's going to become something that's going to be brought into sharp focus in the days ahead as this Luciferian reset is being foisted upon us. So what you're seeing, these symbols of bridges being collapsed, all of this is orchestration. None of it is haphazard. They are signs and they are symbols and they are writ large. Having said that, after the 8th of April and the 40 days of atonement that follow, which lead us to 18th, 19th, 20th, essentially, of May 2024. That is where I believe the real theatrical production kicks off. So what does it mean, was your question? What is the eagle-eye view of what's going on? To my a simple, barefooted Adamite mind, it's all about the collapse of the Babylonian edifice. It is perfect geometry. It is the revelation. One could even call it the rapture that is upon us. But let's not get caught up in the false light rapture, the kind of the idolatrous religious rapture as an engineered event and orchestration as well. But the real rapture is the revelation, the awakening of the eternal mother, as I put it, which is upon us. This is a return to the sacred soil. This is a return and a resurrection of the angelic template. So we're seeing the end of days, but they are the fallen light of Atlantis days. We're seeing the onset of the resurrection of the angelic, the immanent, the ineffable. It is all good as far as I'm concerned.
It has to happen, is all I have to say, because this can't go on any longer. Recently, you had a ceremony where you were going to, I believe it was pass on the stick, the auditory stick to the grandmother essence, I believe it was, and that got canceled somehow. I want to talk about that because this is incredibly important when we look at Hopi and other Native American tribes and the standard of how they dealt with life in general. And the women of the tribe, the grandmother wisdom, grandfather wisdom, those had to work together. And it seems like we're coming back into that, and you're honoring that.
That was my attempt. I was seized throughout the course of the last year with this, I guess, a kind of premonitory or premonition of what was going to be unfolding soon. And what I sensed was that it was a return to the bosom, to the womb of the Creator, not the angry, jealous gods of old, the Yahwehs and Jehovahs, who are not the gods, but the posturers. That's the masquerading aspect of God, the interventionist intercessionaries, the God kings, if you will. So the Yahweh and the Jehovah is an extension of the Anunnaki, the Nephilim, and all of that. And the problem is that we've been suckered into believing that that is the God. And so we've been indentured into a very long cycle of religious idolatry. Even the best Christians, Muslims, Jews, and Hindus and Buddhists amongst us have been caught in that false light matrix of idolatry and not the living gospel, but instead worshiping dead men on sticks and worshiping fat Buddhas in the corner of their living room with incense and copal burning away. None of that has anything to do with the living testament or the living gospel. That is clear to any human being who has been through the dark night of the soul and resurrected themselves, which indeed is what we take away from the message of the Master Jesus, the need for each of us to do as he did and to face the devil, so to speak, within the atom seed of our own heart, to spend that 40 days in the desert and so on and so forth. So, Brad, it's like this. Those good humans who are sufficiently meek of heart, whether they are Jews, Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, Confucianists, Taoists, doesn't matter. Those good humans amongst us who are meek of heart sufficiently, who have indeed done the death and rebirth within themselves and the 40 days of atonement, if it comes to it, they are going to surf pretty much through what's coming. The collective, humanity's collective, that has not done that work, that shadow work, so to speak, or the 40 days in the desert, or the repentance or the atonement, are about to meet with a collective maelstrom. That is the apocalypse by extension. It is Armageddon by extension. And it's playing out right now. If you look if you're unfortunate enough to be facing a television screen and looking at BBC or CNN or even the TikTok and Instagram and Facebook feeds, you can see the calamity unfolding. You can see floods and hurricanes and typhoons and earthquakes and great big chasms opening up in the earth, and all of this tempestuous geoseismic activities and lights in the sky, UFOs, holographic projections. Some of them are real, some of them are not. All of this maelstrom is going to be hitting very hard, and that's kicking off this summer without any question of doubt. It's going to move, I believe, to its fulmination in 2027, and 28, I believe, is when we come through that fully and then move on to become what we ought to be, which is resurrected as galactic citizens and grow up. Just grow up as a genus, as a species.
This is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this I feel is the beginning of the age of Aquarius, where it's coming in, where people are about love and light instead of control and command and death and destruction. And you travel a lot, and I heard you talk on Charlie Ward's show recently, and you were talking about traveling across America, and you saw that they were forced to wake up almost. And they're buying guns and ammunition, and they're realizing everything they believed in is kind of gone. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, and I'll almost regurgitate what I just said, but with a slight shift. So they are seeing the end of days. They're seeing the apocalypse, and they're seeing prophecy play out in accordance with the biblical prophecy. But those who have held true to the mystical roots of their religion are not will not be harmed or injured, cannot be by definition. They are the meek of heart. They walk through the valley of death, fearing no ill. I'm seeing a great many people in my networks reaching out to me and saying that they welcome with open arms the calamity that's befalling us, because they see it's the fall of Babylon in that sense. And it's a very necessary and needful collapsing of the old patriarchal system. And yes, the theme in my life has been a return of the feather or the talking stick or the power rod to the grandmother, so to speak, because that to me is the only place we can go, is to return to the bosom of our mother. Do recall that we fled from her tit and we fucked up. We went into the world playing with dangerous toys, and for a very long period of time, the hegemony of that imperial dominion that rolled out over the last half a millennia, the last 500 years, through the Vatican, giving the crowns of Europe again the license to go forth and conquest the world and to massacre and Holocaust all the black skin, brown skin, red skin, yellow skin people of the world. That's the theme I stay with, because that is what happened, and we have not yet atoned for what we did. So the thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of early settlers, colonists, pioneers, mariners, soldiers that went forth on those ships under the papal decree and the flag, giving them the license to go and massacre, rape, steal the gold, heist the land. That warrior class put it this way, an infantile, psychosexually conflicted echelon of man went forward, fled from his mother's bosom into the world, ransacked the world, and massacred the innocents. And we're now living through the back end of that 500-year wave. So those middle Americans who are clutching a Bible and a gun or a pitchfork, those who are in congruence or in alignment with the living gospel of their master, will be absolutely fine about what's happening, and they will indeed welcome it. Conversely, the majority who are idolatrous Christians. Now, they're zealots, they're fools. They are the enablers of the satanic status quo whilst wearing their crucifixes. That aspect or element, broader element of humanity is about to meet with its retribution, and the tribulation is upon them.
I agree with you because they don't carry Christ in their heart, is how I look at it. It's all up here, and an eye versus an eye kind of mentality, and they don't realize they're feeding into the satanic world with their dogma and their pointing of fingers. So I agree with you on that. Um, how do you prepare? Because someone like me, I feel like I'm kind of awake, I'm taking care of things, but I still have people around me that are not awake yet. And there's communities, we're starting to split off into our own communities now, where you really truly have to be surrounded with people who are so like-minded. It's not funny. I mean, I'm seeing it everywhere.
Again, the meek inherit the earth. We all know within the sanctity of our hearts, we know the measure of our souls, the degree to which we can, each of us, retire at the end of the day from our brokerage on Wall Street or sweeping the streets, from pouncing around in these insane theaters called law courts, being functionaries, technocrats, and bureaucrats of a satanic status quo, pen pushers, or just common citizens trying to get through the day. As we retire from that day's tasking and we go home and we settle down for the night, and the sun sets and the moon rises, and we move into silence, into stillness. Once we've turned the television off, turned the radio off, taken the earphones off, stopped gibbering bullshit to friends and family on telephone calls, regurgitating the same old anecdotes, the same old white noise. When we return to the sanctuary of silence within ourselves and set our heads upon the pillow, that is the moment of reckoning with each of us. And as we awaken in the morning and blink into the daylight, that sense of dread that rises in our belly, we are the ones who measure and weigh and judge and condemn ourselves. No one else does that. Mm-hmm. So the meek, and I would certainly, Brad, classify you as being a classic good human. Again, there's nothing you need to do because you are doing and being it in the now. I'm quite satisfied that I am a righteous, judicious, kind, good, decent, generous man. I've certainly never stepped away from that. I can be fierce and I can slay dragons if needs be, and I will speak pure truth to any edifice of authority or power, and I'll do it unashamedly, unabashedly. And if needs be, I'll get into the mud physically and beat the proverbial living shit out of a bully if it comes to it. So I know who and what I am as a man, but what I do is keep it grounded and keep it real. I step away from alcohol. I've never touched it. I've never touched a drug in my life. I do have a predilection for tobacco here and there. And outside of that, I lead a simple life. I have no piles of money in bank accounts. Anyone who knows me and lives near me knows that I'm very generous and I generate millions and millions of dollars, but I don't keep it. I don't put it into personal bank accounts in Switzerland. Quite the contrary. I constantly move whatever money's coming in, I push it straight out again. I think I pay about 70 or 75 paychecks a month, salaries. So I keep a lot of people in my ecosystem. What I'm saying to you, Brad, I'm trying to illustrate by example my own life. I elevate art, beauty, and consciousness. I like to live well. I think we should all be living as kings and queens and emperors and empresses. I insist that the kingdom of heaven insists that we live as kings and queens. So I don't diminish or degrade the quality of life in any way, shape, or form. I don't like penury. I don't like people who are slavish to the idea of not having money or not having lifestyle. But I'm saying I don't sequester or hold the gold. And the problem is most people, the overarching majority of humans, are addicted to their own ideas of time and money and fear. It's an old theme that I've been banging on about for well over a decade now. But most people are indentured to time and to money, and thereby lead fearful lives. They're afraid of losing the money, afraid of losing the power, afraid of losing youth, beauty, whatever it is. We can and should get more beautiful the older we get. And the more meek of heart we are, certainly that's the benediction that we're received by. But to answer the question, we cannot do anything, I do not believe, to retrieve or redeem those around us. And that was really the gist of your question, sure, other than by being the living example.
Wow. God bless you, man. I love you. You're doing amazing work.
Thank you.
I want to talk now. I just had Jason Christoff on the show, and we talked extensively about the propaganda machine that's happening all over the world. You know, you see it combating sex traffic. You know, as soon as something comes up that proves that sex trafficking is happening, especially children being shuttled all over the world, all this propaganda comes up and says, no, 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 that's crazy talk. Or you see a film like Leave the World Behind, and it's loaded with all this imagery and things that we're supposed to follow. What are the big lies that you see that they keep pounding us with? Because I want my audience to understand, you may be living in something that works perfectly for you right now, but a lot of our belief system came from an outside source. And I really want to talk a little bit about the big lies that are everywhere.
Well, let's just narrow focus onto the children momentarily. The reason why the notion of children in the basement and rat lines and catacombs and tunnels and pedophilia and ritual satanic abuse and all of that stuff, the reason why that is has been the best kept secret for millennia is because that approaches the root of the civilizational source code. And the invisible masters, the draconian, reptilian, Thetan, Orion, Zeta Reticulan, lower archonic, astral, interventionist forces that drive their earthly proxies in the portals of power all around the world and have done for thousands of years, have been subsisting essentially on the harvest of humanity and the sacrifice of innocence. So be crystal clear, or try to be as crystal clear as I am on this matter. The reason why the status quo always tries to subvert that narrative is because that narrative is tapping into the source code. And the source code is that this is the entire cycle, galactic cycle that we have been traveling through or traversing has been underpinned by the parasite. You could call it the parasite. So that, again, Theta, Orion, Reticulan's draconian element of the galactic cosmogenetic connection to the human story, all of that, the shade, the shadow, the black backdrop, the malignant, negative, evil backdrop is part of the equation. It's half of the equation. The other half of the equation is the benevolent, highly loving and advanced and evolved intelligences of the Andromedans and Pleiadians and Alpha Centaurian, and a great many other benevolent intelligences, interstellar intelligences, subdimensional, interdimensional, supradimensional, hyperdimensional. They live, exist, interweave into our holographic existence on Earth variously, but we are the galactic hybrid. You and I are the issue of that black and white a checkerboard in the galactic and cosmic sense. That all finds its compression point here on Earth. So Earth becomes the checkerboard of the kingdom of the devil, the real one, because this is where it's all at the galactic level compressed down into a small aggregated fractal of black and white, which is why it's a dualistic world we live on, made up of black and white, red and blue, up and down, left and right, male and female, electric, magnetic, so on and so forth. Everything is caught up in that maelstrom. And of course, having set that piece perfectly, I've completely forgotten the gist of your question. But it does go back to the children. And the children in the basement describes the source code of the parasite's existence. Because without having lived and sustained their false light jurisdiction through the stealing of the Promethean fire, which is Kundalini in this context, it is the prana or life force or Kundalini that coils up the caduceus of the spinal column of the infant, of the innocent, and being able to, in the first instance, invert that through sodomy and rape of the infant is how the Kundalini is flipped and then exits the child or the infant or the innocent one, the one that's being tortured, whoever it is. And they surrender form and leave this plane because the trauma, the torture was too much. That happens oftentimes. And then that stolen fire finds its way through into the heart of darkness of the satanic priests or perpetrators at high levels and at low levels, because it's also a mundane level of raping kiddies for kicks. It goes all the way up to torturing and extracting the adrenal secretions, the pineal secretions, and so on. Yeah. So this is food stuff and has been for, again, millions of years, not thousands of years, not hundreds of thousands, millions of years. We can track the trajectory of this universe back about 954 billion years. I would urge everyone to pay no attention, little to no attention, to what populist academia tries to teach you about the duration or the history of time. We know it's about 954 billion years. In fact, later this year, I'm working on a very stark project with the archaeocosmologist Dave Emery, and we're going to be mapping that 954 billion year trajectory for 10 days on a ship in the Mediterranean as we move from Greece to Turkey to Egypt. And we're going to map the whole thing out once and for all.
Oh, that is awesome. I can't wait to see that. As you know, I know Mindy Robinson, we're friends. She's been doing documentary work on the Tartarian culture that disappeared and also how they've rewritten history. But Graham Hancock says something that I find very powerful, and he says the human race suffers from amnesia. And I believe this, obviously, this has been done intentionally. How do we get back to that? I mean, people like you are doing the work, but I tell people basically, you cannot believe what they've told you to believe. And so what do you say to some people sometimes about this?
Well, Graham's entirely right about the amnesia, but again, it's self-elected. It's not something that happened to us. We drank the cup of forgetfulness, the cup of Lethe, as the ancient Greeks would have it. We are the ones who took a backward flip into the cauldron of creation, into the abyss, into the great unknown, precisely because we are noble sparks of the divine. And we knew that we'd reconfigure at some point in the end of time, and we would remember ourselves in that void, and through the quantum reconnect through the womb of the eternal mother to the eternal father, so to speak, Alpha Omega. And in that state of rapture or revelation and enlightenment, we return we return home and we bring with us, beneath the shade of our angelic wings, we take with us a great many other souls that we have helped find their way back home toward the light. And that is the noble journey. That's the hero's journey. We are all, in that sense, the Messiah, and we bloody well ought to know it and own it. And that also was the message of the Master from Nazareth that has been overlooked by the idiot class of idolatrous Christian. But I'll say another thing, that an interesting pointer. Akhenaten, the Egyptian god king, was a remarkable historical figure, greatly worthy of research and learning about. In the course of his life, he salvaged over 200,000 human souls into their angelic template. He used the Great Pyramid in Egypt as the means by which he opened or activated that angelic conduit. That was rumbled and discovered by his peers, and he was then closed down and terminated in point of fact. But the life and times of Akhenaten is quite fascinating. Partly what gave him such incredible strength and power was the fact that he subsisted in great part on a form of crack cocaine that was known at that time to the god kings, which was the dustification of mummies as angelic humans were dying, either naturally or through torture and murder. As the soul exited or exits an angelic human, it leaves a residue. It's a residual phenomenon, which is a form of shimmering dust. And if that dust is collected after the demise of the angelic human and then ingested by another, the other takes on a tremendous amount of life force and power, albeit it's stolen. Again, it's Promethean, in the same way that adrenochrome is a Promethean element. But I'm saying this to illustrate the fact that Akhenaten became heavily addicted to that. I don't suggest for a moment that he was murdering or torturing in order to partake of that mummified dust, but for sure he was subsisting on it and being sustained by it, his power. However, he was collecting it, and at that time, it was that gave him power to accomplish great deeds. But ultimately, as I understand it, the ingesting of that mummified dust, angelic dust, creates, I can't remember the name of the condition, but it's a calcification essentially, and it brings about a demise. But so when you look at monumental stories like the life and times of Akhenaten, the only god king that I'm aware of who was activated, the conduit to Alpha Omega, and elevated over 200,000 humans back into the angelic template whilst he was alive, and he was about to rupture the heavens, take the diabolical terrestrial plane back into its angelic template, because it's rather like causing a positive atomic reaction. One atom begets two, begets four, and boom, it's unstoppable. So he was breaching the old draconian matrix, the dragnet, and he did it on false fuel, on Promethean fuel. It's a wonderful, wonderful story, but it does illustrate how each of us, in a sense, even the very best of us, are still living as the parasite. We are making money off one another. Even I, as an influencer, I mean, I generate revenues. I do real estate, property, this, that, and the other. I incubate technologies and very, very advanced microbiological supplements that deal with vax injury and transfection and all sorts of other things. So all of that stuff, one way or the other, is charging coin, and I'm not functioning in a zero-point economy, and yet I'm the biggest proponent of a zero-point economy. I'm desperately focused toward bringing that about. The reason why I insist on a 0-point economy ultimately is because that's the only way in which we can address this great imbalance of the parasite and the victim.
Powerful, powerful story. I mean, and also, yeah, I wish for that day too, because I think when we stop being driven by money, I'm going to have this career and I'm going to do this, we now can step back and ask ourselves, what would I do now? Because I don't need to generate money. Would I be an artist? Would I be a piano player? Would I, whatever, create? Our sense of creation is not driven now by survival. And so now we can step back and do what we were put on earth to do, our God-given talents. I'm an artist. I would paint and draw all day.
Well, you would, and then you would take it further. You would start exploring the hyperdimensional aspects of art and sculpture and creativity, and would start to play with vibration and sound and light and color, and we'd start to build a fifth dimensional, sixth dimensional, seven, eight, nine, 10th dimensional art, which takes us ever higher into our limitless capacity for genius and expression. But yes, I take your point. Remove fear as a source code, survivalism, fight and flight, survivalism from the equation. And what you have is an immediate return, an immediate return to serendipity, an immediate return to grace, an immediate return to prayerfulness and meditativeness in the right sense, in the navel-gazing sense, where we really start to ponder the mystery of creation. And we're able to allow the imagination to fly unfettered because we don't have to wake up to an alarm clock and get back in the ditches.
I truly believe that God, the creator, God, when he created soul, gave us one of the most powerful things, and that is our creative imagination. But there's a second part to that creative imagination, and that is the ability to manifest what is going on inside our head. We can literally create the world we want. And I feel that's divine. And you're kind of touching on, and I believe that you're touching on what you call the mechanics of ascension. Is that correct?
Yes, that's exactly correct. And thank you for bringing the subject here. So two things. One, I speak about the mechanics of ascension because I have a tremendous understanding of it. I may be poor in the way that I express my understanding of it, but I have a very fierce understanding of the mechanics of ascension based on hard experience, which for me takes me back to the 1980s, the late 1980s, where I was allowed through my exchange at that time with angelic beings. I was permitted to experience and to some extent to experiment with what I now call the mechanics of ascension. So what was imbued into me many, many years ago by my exchange with the angelic beings was that ascension is a biological phenomenon. It is not a psycho-spiritual, esoteric phenomenon. It is very much a physical phenomenon, and indeed will be in the course of my lifetime. So that was what was assured to me and what I saw in what you would loosely call prophetic vision in the 1980s, which then repeated again in the late 1990s for me personally. So I had those prophetic visions in the 80s reaffirmed and underscored in the late 1990s. And subsequent to that, in 1999, I threw away my guitar, threw away childish things, stepped away from the kingdom of the devil, and I purposed my life alpha omega into pure inquiry, into the resurrection of the angelic template, or the assemblage of the alphabet of the human heart initially, and then reconstituting the fellowship of man. How can we do it? How do we go about doing it? And that's been my life's journey for the last 25 years, almost entirely. Forgive me, I probably forgot the gist of the question again.
Now, just the mechanics of ascension, our ability to create, what drives us when money is not the factor,
Let me riff on that a little bit more. So indeed, thank you for that. So indeed, that's the key understanding. That's the piece that we need to own in order to receive what I loosely term the Christed mantle. We are required to take the throne of self. And my haters hate me when I use this language, and the people who are kind enough to support what I say love this language because it reaffirms what they know, what we know. When we take the throne of witness within the actualized self and take the throne, we receive the Christed mantle. Now, we can only take that seat of witness if we're standing in pure truth. To stand in pure truth, again, to couch a phrase, is to stand directly beneath central sun and cast no shadow. That's difficult. That's really difficult in a realm which can only be described as a checkerboard of black and white. How do you not cast a shadow and yet move seamlessly between the black and the white? You do it by doing it. The flame of pure truth is so incredibly powerful and omnipotent. It is the Christed mantle. And when we take that, we're having an earthquake right now, just so you know, if we're rumbling here, that's what it is.
Wow.
Odd, very odd. If we take the Christed mantle, and here's another key piece, is that in order to take that mantle, receive that mantle, we are absolutely required to see the world through the eyes of a child. And the eyes of a child do not judge or condemn. They simply witness.
Yeah.
And they witness with a sense of wonderment. And that's the return to innocence that we need to see happening wholesale. Obviously, we have to see the end of money first. We have to see the end of false light transaction and exchange. We have to see the end of the toxic high street. We have to see the end of so much that we've come to accept and acknowledge as normal, which in point of fact is entirely abnormal under the gaze of the eternal sky.
It's, I have the greatest hope for the human race, and even I have days where I get smacked in the head where I'm a little down. Are we gonna make it? It's sort of crosses my mind, and then last summer you were in Las Vegas at the Reawaken tour with Clay Clark, and you wake us all back up just by your presence. So I have to say thank you. Because I saw you from down the aisle. I'm like, Sacha, I didn't even know you were going to be there. I came to see Roseanne and all of these other people, and you walk in the room. Thank you, man, so much for waking people up, doing the work you're doing, and just being you. I was actually going to ask you, when did you wake up? And you went right into it, actually. Real quick, I want to talk about this, and this is, you had the New Earth project, and you have a New Earth Haven. Is that correct?
Well,
do you want to talk a little?
The New Earth Haven is essentially my home in Bali that I built 20 years ago. But I then evolved that. I thought, well, I'm building a palace here out of the mud in the rice fields, and it's a very, very beautiful place, and it's something of a mecca, and has been for many years for thousands of people. And I was more or less living on my own there with my monkeys and dogs and cats and a few staff, and in the jungle. And it was I was doing a lot of work in the world and then bouncing back there as my retreat. And then I thought, when I launched the New Earth project in 2013 into 2014, it wasn't guilt that overtook me, but I thought, this is crazy. I need to, if I'm speaking about conscious community or fellowship and the New Earth template, I need to expand my own vision at the local level. So I decided to morph my home into a New Earth Haven and build more infrastructure. And we had a lot of trials and tribulations in so doing. But the New Earth Haven emerged as a kind of stepping stone, a blueprint of how you elevate art, beauty, and consciousness, and you create a place as a living shrine, a living temple to the fellowship, a community of souls. And that's what we've proven out time and time again since 2016, 2017, when we opened it. That then evolved into a bigger plan, and I started to think in terms of establishing a far bigger jurisdiction, one that could house 2,000 or 3,000 residents and receive thousands of visitors, I don't know if you can hear that, but this place is rumbling all over. It's extraordinary.
Wow.
So there were thousands of, how do you build a place and jurisdiction that can have 2,000 or 3,000 people living in it? That's a big, big community. Yeah. But that's exactly what I've begun to do. In fact, today is a very sacred day. After, again, a lot of trials and tribulations in the last 18 months with the New Earth Sanctuary project here in Mexico, and some real skullduggery that went on initially with some rather shameless characters who will remain nameless for the time being, provided they continue to behave themselves. That we've been through all of that shit show, but today was the great signing. I had about 50 people downstairs with notaries and lawyers and investors and some of our pioneers. So we start putting spades in the ground imminently. And we've done so much master planning and architectural blueprinting. We're ready to race. And I'm going to give a slight hint here, Brad, which I kind of promised I wouldn't do, but I'm going to. In a couple of weeks' time, I'm going to be starting a tour in the United States. It's a social tour, about 10 or 12 states, I think, from California swinging across to Florida. It's a social tour. I'm dropping in to see people who are connected to the Lazarus Initiative, part of my more focused network. And they're having friends and family and people around to their homes. We'll be doing a few venues along the way. It's purely a social tour, but I'm essentially promoting the new Earth Farmacy in a big way. I'm starting a viral campaign to really explain to folks what this is. I've been saying in media interviews for the last few months, the last 6 months or so, that the new Earth Farmacy is the most important work I've ever done in my life. And it is. It's not the most exciting, but it's the most important, because we're bringing microbiological, the cavalry has arrived. Anyone who is dying, vax injury, transfection, massive immune failure, and we all are variously suffering from it. The light has arrived, and this is what the proprietary technology behind the protein extractions and the microbiological formulas that constitute what we're bringing through the new Earth Farmacy is, in my view, the greatest breakthrough in medical science history, bar none. Now, because I do so many things and I'm on so many different platforms, that piece has been kind of blurred and lost in the source. And that's caused a great deal of concern to me and my team. So I'm doing this trip across America to grassroots, meet with people and explain, do a slideshow, do in living rooms, and also do a kind of 2-hour big immersive on corrected history, archaeocosmology, mechanics of ascension. But the key piece is you and I have got to resurrect our DNA, mRNA right now from the kingdom of the devil. That's the existential threat, and we have the means to do that.
God bless you. I am passionate about this. You know, some people think it's boring, but I won't go into names. But my fiance and I, we got one of those plasma generators for healing purposes. I've been doing Jim Humble's MMS protocols. My father was a chiropractor, and I learned reflexology at 10 years of age. My fiance is Asian, so we are in that band, that zone. And I have a lot of people on my show, from Dr. Randy Shannon to Dr. Joel Wallach. You know, all these things I think are incredibly important in this day and age. I believe the human being can easily live to 144 years of age. That's 12 cycles of 12. And if we look at the patterns of the human body, we are in these 12 on 12 cycles. And so I'm a big fan of all this stuff. Please let me know when you're in town. I'd love to attend.
I'll certainly do that. But I can tell you that I've been involved in the longevity sciences, as some people who followed my work know. A few years ago, I launched a company called Immortalis, and it was a very expensive product at that time. I had no control over the price points. Essentially, we were launching a new company, a startup, on behalf of a very brilliant microbiologist who had learned how to dilate time at the level of DNA through the endogenous manufacture of a particular hormone or gene. You would call it that, the Cloto gene. And so we had that, and we were, unfortunately, that tanked because of greedy directors of mine who heisted the company. Again, I don't put myself down as owner of things, and I oftentimes trust. I have to trust people. I don't put myself on paper wherever I can avoid it. And unfortunately, that went south. But it taught me a great deal. And that Cloto gene and being able to extend life, we knew with that gene we could extend life 120 easily. As long as you had a protracted treatment with or as long as you kept taking the Cloto formula, but it was prohibitively expensive. That was the problem. So I never knew how we would ever dial that down to the ground floor. But I can tell you, here I am a number of years later, 5, 6 years later, and the team of microbiologists that I'm working with now and that I've financed essentially in Eastern Europe are categorically able to extend life. I would say right now we are less than a year away from turning the death gene off and being able to live limitlessly. And I don't know or care what's going on in the fetid Illuminati basements connected to GlaxoSmithKline, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and their other cloning facilities or whatever godless genetic witchery that they've been up to in their scientific basement, heavily financed by black op budgets stolen off the purse of good taxpayers. That doesn't bother me. I don't care what they're up to. I know that what we're up to is endogenous, it's biodynamic, it's non-synthetic, and it's also connected to the resurrection of the angelic template, aka the mechanics of ascension. It's consciousness and it's science.
I love it. And I look at it this way. Are we entering in the medical field with light, or are we going into darkness and experimentation? And I love hearing stuff like this. I have a blue shield right here in my house, by the way, the cube, and it made all the difference with electromagnetic radiation and things like that. So thank you, Sacha, for being on Awakened Nation. Hey, everybody, you can go to sachastone.com. That's with a C, SACHA. And yeah, I want to continue a little bit with the little time we have left. What is your greatest hope for the human race right now?
I don't hold out hope. Of course, I'm not being churlish. I know what you mean. But I've trained this mind of mine away from hope and hopefulness. I've trained this heart away from trust and trustfulness and faith. And I don't mean to put down good people of the book who have trust and faith and hope. I'm just saying that for myself, I've withdrawn these notions of hoping for something, of trusting in something, and having faith in something. What I am doing now in my own gospel or living testament is I am taking that throne of witness. I am not castigating or condemning or judging the other, but I am being a critical witness of that which self-exists, self-reveals, and self-fulfills. And what that is doing to me is thinning the veil between this world and the kingdom of heaven, so to speak. I am beginning to recognize that the kingdom of heaven describes the immanent geometric patterns of perfection and of divinity that self-exist, self-reveal, and self-fulfill behind, within, above, below, and around the quanta of me right here, right now. That the degree to which I can step into pure coherence with God, so to speak, and become at one with God, where the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, the Magdalene are all the same quanta. That is how I can best serve my fellows. That is how best I can serve God. And for sure, that is how I can best serve self, is by being in full coherence, which is to say there's nothing to hope for. I regard the geometry of now as being perfect always, in all ways. And it's the consistent state of grace in knowing that God's law and the geometry of the divine is always perfect, always in all ways, that I find peace. And in finding peace, I can take that seat upon that throne and be of service, of highest service.
And also, don't forget to go to
The New Earth Farmacy with an F, pharmacy with an F.com.
the new earthfarmacy.com with an F, not a PH. Wow. This is going to be a huge game changer for everybody, because those of you who may not know this, this type of healing modalities go back 5,000 years until it was hijacked by the chemists and the what we call modern Western medicine. This will heal you at the cellular level. And I know I'm going to get in trouble for saying that because they are watching.
Oh, you're allowed to say it, actually. It's so am I. I'm an influencer. I don't own the company. I made sure I have no part of the ownership of the company. You can say what the hell you like, mate. The FDA be damned. The CDC be damned. They are godless organs of the devil. They bloody well know it. They know that we know that they know that we know it. We've got good people like Tom Rentz and an entire army of barristers and lawyers who will crack their skulls open if they try to come after us. But one has to still be cautious, because nervous people do get bullied by them.
Yes, they do. Thank you again. I am still blown away that earthquake took place during our broadcast here. I hope you don't have any damage, but I'm like, what the hell is going on? I always find, you know what it is? Important conversations, when they're really, really important, this is the kind of stuff that happens. So,
yes.
So thank you again, Sacha. Love and light. You are a beacon, my friend. Thank you for being on Awakened Nation. I appreciate it.
Very kind. God bless you.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. Don't forget to tune in next week for another great guest here on Awakened Nation. Until then, bye-bye. Thank you so much for being a big part of the Awakened Nation movement. This is how you can help me and our extraordinary guests. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And let's grow this movement by word of mouth. Our success will be because of you. Thank you, and see you next week.